What's going on, guys? Hey, I wanted to bring you a clip this evening, or actually two clips, with Jordan Peterson. He's talking to a man at the Hoover Institute, and they're discussing several different topics. But two topics I want to kind of focus on is the idea of freedom of speech and the idea of guilt. The first one that I'm putting up is the idea of guilt. We demonize certain people because of the color of their skin and because of their genitalia, the sex that they belong to. And we demonize them. We say that they have unearned privilege. And again, we're taking people, and we're taking a group of people based on their skin color and their sex, and we're ascribing certain beliefs to that person, those people. We're stereotyping those people. But the funny thing is, I thought stereotyping people and stereotyping groups was wrong. We can't do that because not everyone in a group has those characteristics or have those privileges. So, I thought it was wrong to kind of characterize groups, to ascribe certain things to groups. But and the second thing is freedom of speech. Guys, if we don't have that, if we don't have freedom of speech, we can't think, because we think with words. That's how we kind of extract what we want from something, and that's how we kind of whittle things down to what we want and what we don't want. But in how the kind of the left is really demonizing people for having a different view and speaking on that view. And if you speak against something, you're causing violence against whatever group. And the fact of the matter is, just because you disagree with somebody, unless you're actually actively calling for violence, you're not. The violence is not you. You're discussing something. You're talking about something, and if you're not allowed to do that, where are we as a society if we can't discuss ideas and talk about things and say that we disagree with something? But anyways, guys, I'm going to put up these two clips. And if you would, please like and subscribe to my content. And leave a comment down below and let me know what if you agree with something or disagree, and what you think about this stuff. But anyways, guys, I want to thank you also for the ones that have subscribed. Thank you. I appreciate it.
More importantly, it's that people are guilty. And the radicals who accuse us all, historically and as individuals, of being motivated by nothing but the desire for power, strike a chord, especially in people who are conscientious, because if you're a conscientious...
Again, it's so easy to lay guilt on somebody who, again, like what he says, is a very, very conscientious people. If somebody doesn't care, if somebody doesn't really look at themselves, they're not going to feel their way. But, conscientious people, they're yeah, maybe I am guilty. They're going to think. So I get what he's saying.
Conscientious person, and someone comes to you and says, like a little mob of 30 people, says, you can be a little more careful in what you say and do on the racist front and the sexist front, etc., you're likely to think, well, I'm not perfect. I probably could be a little more careful, and it's no doubt that people have been oppressed in the past, and it's also no doubt that in some sense I'm the undeserving beneficiary of historical atrocity, and so, maybe I should look to myself, and that's weaponization of guilt, and it's very effective.
Yeah, I think that's very dangerous to, for people to think that, you know what, I'm the undeserving beneficiary of what I have. And I think that's dangerous. I mean, basically you're saying that you can almost say that to anyone with anything, that you are undeserving of what you have. And the fact that somebody has something, maybe that makes them deserving. Just kind of again, I'm not saying that somebody ought to steal something and rape and whatever to get something, but it's like people that have done that here nowadays are in jail, or they should be in jail. There's laws against that kind of stuff, and there has been for many years. And to say that somebody is born with a particular privilege because of their skin color or because of their genitalia, is really kind of overly generalizing particular groups. That's stereotypical. That's stereotyping particular groups. And the funny thing is, the far left really hates for you to stereotype unless you're a particular group. To me, it's odd.
And it's not surprising, but it's not helpful. So, so there's a resentment that drives this, like a corrosive resentment that's able to weaponize guilt, and it's very difficult for people to withstand it.
Listen,
talking to my audience about is this right to free speech and how that might be conceptualized, because you can think about it as a right among other rights, let's say. So it's just one of a list of rights. And you can also think of rights as being granted to you, let's say, in some sense by the social contract. And so, which is a different theory, say, than the notion that rights originate in some underlying religious insistence of the divine value of the individual. The problem with there's a bunch of problems with the rights among other rights argument. I don't think free speech is a right among other rights. I don't think there's any difference between free speech and thought. And it has to be free, because if it's not free, it's not thought. So imagine mostly you have to think about hard things, because why think? Otherwise, if everything's going all right, you don't have a problem. When you have a problem, you have to think. And if you have a problem, the thinking is going to be troublesome, because you're going to think things that upset yourself and upset other people. It's part of the necessity. It's part of what will necessarily happen if you're thinking.
I just want to repeat.
Yeah?
You said something that just stopped me. Sorry, because stopped me so completely cold that I missed a little bit of what followed. I just want to repeat it. There is no difference between speech and thought. If you're going to have free thought, you must have free speech.
Well,
that's the argument.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll unpack that.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I mean, if you can't have freedom of thought, how can you have freedom of speech? If you can't have freedom of speech, how can you have freedom of thought? The whole idea of being able to go over something and kind of deduct what you see valuable, extract what you see valuable from something, requires freedom of thought. And if you can't if you're not allowed to speak about things openly and freely, how can you have freedom of thought? Because we think in the way that we speak. We don't. I know for myself, I don't think we differentiate the two. We believe the way that we look at things. We think the way that we speak. And again, I got a good friend of mine who has a master's degree in linguistics, and he believes the same thing, that we think how we speak. I mean, we think in words. We think in words and concepts, and we're not able to extract something from something. We're not able to extract something valuable if people can speak openly and honestly, even if what they say is offensive, and it's like sometimes in the most offensive speeches, we understand, first of all, there may be something valuable in that, or there may be a level of truth in that people are not comfortable with, which is what makes the speech divisive. But also maybe there's a certain level of darkness in that speech, and there's something we have to hear in order to deduce that what that person is saying is offensive, is wrong, is dark, is evil. But we can't understand where somebody is coming from or where a movement is coming from if we're not allowed to hear what they have to say. And again, sometimes it is darkness, but other times what they're saying makes a lot of sense. And the reason why certain people don't want what they have to say out there is because it shines a light on their argument, and it makes their argument less valid. It pokes holes in their argument, and I think that's what makes people uncomfortable.
That first, and then return to the other one. Well, there's a bunch of reasons for that. I mean, first of all, mostly you think in words. Now, people also think in images, but I'm not going to go into that. We'll just leave that aside. But mostly we think in words. And so we use a mechanism that's sociologically constructed, the world of speech, to organize our own psyches. And we do that with speech. And basically, when you think, there's two components to it that are internal in a sense. When you think you have a problem, so you ask yourself a question, and then answers appear in the theater of your imagination, generally verbally. So that'd be like the revelatory element of thought. And that's very much prayer-like in some fundamental sense, because it's very mysterious, the fact that you can pose yourself a question, and then you can generate answers. It's like, well, why did you have the question if you can generate the answers? If the answers are just there. And where do the answers come from? Well, you can give a materialist account to some extraordinarily limited degree, but phenomenologically, it's still the case that you pose a question to yourself in speech, and you receive an answer in speech. Now, it can also be an image. Forget about that. Well, then the next question is, well, what do you do once you receive the answer? And the answer is, well, if you can think, then you use internal speech to dissect the answer, which is what you do, for example, you encourage your students to do if they're writing an essay. They lay out a proposition, and then you hope they can take the proposition apart. And essentially, if they are, what they're doing is they're transforming themselves into avatars, speaking avatars of two different viewpoints. So you have the speaker for the proposition, and then you have the critic, and maybe you lay out the dialogue between them, and that constitutes the body of the essay. And you have to be bloody sophisticated to manage that, because it means that you have to divide yourself in some sense into two avatars that are oppositional, and then you have to allow yourself to be the battle space between them. And people have to be trained to do that. That's what universities are supposed to do. It's really hard. What people...
guys, I'm going to cut the video here, but yeah. See, what I wanted to do in this episode that I'm putting up is I wanted to touch on two things: the guilt, the whole notion of trying to make other groups guilty, to lay some kind of perceived guilt on particular groups, and the importance of free speech. Because one thing I noticed in doing videos over the last 6 months or so that I started doing things, especially with shorts, I've noticed that when I put up things advocating free speech, even if it's only like a 7 or 8 second video clip or something, I get majority of people like it. They hit the thumbs up button, they like that stuff. But there are people that hit the dislike button, which, so they don't feel comfortable with the notion of free speech. And that really bothers me. Not that my feelings are hurt. You can have whatever opinion you want to have. It doesn't hurt my feelings. But it bothers me that people don't seem to get the fact that we need this. That this is something we need to have. Sometimes we have to speak. We have to be willing to be offensive. And I think that's what Jordan Peterson said at one time too. We have to be willing to be offensive, because if we're not, then we're just shooting the shit. We're just talking. We're not saying anything of substance. We're not saying anything of value, of substance. There's nothing there. We're just talking. We're just talking about the weather or something. But if we're talking about something with some guts to it, we're going to have to be willing to be offensive. But hey, look, guys, if you would, please hit the like button and subscribe button, and let me know in the comments down below what you think. But anyways, guys, and thanks for those who already have subscribed. You son of a